Here's how you know Dan Quinn is a terrible coach. He didn't go for 2, down by 9 against Tampa at the end of the third quarter. There was like 2 minutes left in the third quarter. If he goes for 2, they get down by 8. They're only down by 1 score. He's like, nah, we'll just kick the extra point. Don't worry about it. Like, how big of a moron do you need to be in 2024 to do that?
Mayo experience.
Mayo experience. Mayo experience. Mayo experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, presented by Underdog Fantasy. Week 1 almost finished. We still got Monday Night Football, so we'll have picks for that later on. The power rankings, which we're doing this year on the show. We're going to do the top 10 teams in football and the bottom 10 teams in football, plus our fantasy takeaways, the injury report, pickups. Hit the time codes if you want to jump around. And if you're looking for facts-only quick updates every single morning on Mayo Media Network, I'm doing a quick hitter. If you need to get your information in less than 10 minutes, that's where you want to be. And you can find it on the Fantasy Football Picks and Bets audio feed as well if you're listening to this on the audio podcast. Jake Ciely from theathletic.com. You sounded really bummed out with there was like 6 injuries in the NFL, and apparently they were all on your main team.
Oh, you should be used to that by now if we've been doing this show for, 11 years, as you said. So this is, yes, you're welcome, everybody. If you had Nakua, Ferguson, possibly Achane, and Jordan Love, I have a high volume of those shares across many teams, including my home league. So there you go. My home league is going to be out the window in 3 weeks, as everybody. So I feel your pain. I hate life.
Well, let's start about the power rankings. We can talk about the 10 worst teams in football from 32 to 22, and maybe that'll make you feel better because those teams aren't going anywhere either. I actually found it hard to, once I got to 22 and 23, I don't actually think those teams are all that bad. I think there's really tiers here. Who did you have as the worst team, the 32nd ranked power team in football?
Oh, it's the Panthers.
Yeah.
Not even close.
I mean,
actually, it is kind of close.
It's kind of close.
It's kind of close. Fortunately, Germany has to deal with them together.
Do they play each other in Germany?
Yeah, that's the Germany game. The NFL is like, you want a game, Germany? Haha, screw you.
So I have Carolina at 32 and the Giants at number 31. And I think those are, at least after week 1.
Yes.
Listen, these are going to change a lot
100.
throughout the course of the weeks, but those are by far the 2 worst teams coming out of week
You know what
1.
the funny thing is about that, Mayo, is I can say it on your show. I sat here and I texted my friends. I was like, I want to tweet this, but I feel like this is too borderline. And I was like, this is the NFL telling Germany they're still pissed off about World War II. And then I didn't tweet it. And this was like 2 o'clock. And then I get messages around 3 o'clock from my buddies. Apparently somebody tweeted out and said, this is the final punishment for World War II. And pretty funny, along the same vein. And that was like at 3:20 or something like that. It's like, see, and it blew up and went crazy. I was like, see, but I'm too afraid that I might get canceled.
Well, you just said it now, so you're not that afraid of it. With Carolina.
Well, your show's different. I love your audience.
I have my audience is the uncancelable audience.
Yes, that's why I love them.
There we go. So yeah, smash the like while you're here. I am giving away $500 still. I'm doing that on Wednesday morning during the Spread Pick show. When that comes out, subscribe, rate, and review 5 stars the Pat Mayo Experience audio podcast. You do that, even if you've done it before, you bump yourself back up to the top of the list, and you're in a draw for $500 cash. It's pretty easy to do. So if you're on Spotify or Apple, please go do that now. One thing that I found very strange with the Carolina backfield is that Hubbard played 2 series to every Miles Sanders 1 series. And It was just like, it's your series now. There was a couple teams that did that. Dallas did it as well. It's like, this is a Zeke series. This is a Dodal series. It's the Sanders series. This is a Chuba Hubbard series. And somehow the way that it turned out is that all the extended drives, extended in quotation marks with Carolina, more than 3 play drives were all Miles Sanders drives and not Hubbard.
And I think that really came down to also just what happened to happen at the time, is that the drives were a little bit more effective. But I think this is a big poo-poo all over our excitement for what Hubbard could be until Brooks comes back. I'm surprised after Miles Sanders from last year. But is it their running back coach or Idzik? One of the two, one of them has that tendency to go 2 drives, 1 drive, 2 drives, 1 drive. So this is just something we have to know going forward, that Hubbard's probably flex, if that, at this point, because even 66%, as you can see, the drives could go sideways and the drives could be better with Sanders. And that kind of workload splitting off. The only reason we were in on Hubbard is to be like, ooh, he's getting that bell cow work he had last year filling in. if that's out the window on the Panthers, I don't really know, unfortunately, how you can even start Hubbard at this point.
Yeah, you probably can't unless it's a flex. I have all of the snap shares and routes run for running backs, including goal line and red zone touches in the free newsletter on Mayo Media. You can click the link down in the description and go get that right now. I'd recommend that you subscribe to that because I release those on Sunday evenings. If you're needing a quick hit for who played what and how many routes did they run and how many times did they touch the ball, you can find that down in the newsletter. My pickups will be down there as well as Jake and I talk through them, and I'll have them updated after the show. Aaron Jones, Ty Chandler did the same thing as well. It was 2 for Aaron Jones, 1 for Ty Chandler, although Aaron Jones looked significantly better in that backfield.
Yeah. Don't care about that one. As I said in the preseason, being high on Aaron Jones is the guy who used to hate Aaron Jones. But this is who Aaron Jones was. Even when he was with the Packers, it wasn't like he was running 260 times a year with the receptions on top of it. It was 200, 210, maybe 220, but then the receptions on top of it. We don't want Aaron Jones running the ball 250 plus times. So I'm completely fine with that. I kind of expected not necessarily to be series based, but that work share to be out there anyway.
If you were playing fantasy, which I think a lot of people who are watching this show are doing, is there anyone you could legitimately start and feel good about on the Panthers?
No, because the biggest problem about it too is the wide receivers are basically in a rotation. Deontay Johnson wasn't even out there 80% of the time. Didn't get that. I mean, the reason we were buying into Deontay Johnson pretty much is the only one we were hoping for. Maybe Leggett down the road. Thielen looked fine. He's not quite dead yet, but the biggest thing is nobody was at 80%. I think actually there were 2 of them that were even 70%, most of them in that 65 to 75% range, which goes back to the Hubbard situation. If you're going to get a rotation at wide receiver and arguably the worst offense in the NFL, no. I mean, I hope for Deontay Johnson because I did get a few of him as my wide receiver 4 just because it's like, why not? The volume is going to offset it, but he's not going to get the volume, then you can't start him right now.
Yeah, and like even Jatavion Sanders gets the start, runs the most routes, plays the most snaps at tight end, and was 1 target for 4 yards. Like, if there was going to be anyone with Bryce Young checking down and throwing the ball, it would be the guy that's like patrolling the line of scrimmage, and that didn't even work out.
No, it didn't. And as you said, it's week 1, and I had a column this offseason about the top 5 improved offenses for the quarterback, and one of them was the Panthers. I mean, through week 1, if the people who wanted to end Bryce Young's career after last year are taking a victory lap after week 1. Let's put it that way.
They probably should, because it doesn't seem like anything has gotten better.
It doesn't. And then, like I said, when you bring in Deontay Johnson, Leggett, and build this team to have a little bit more of the separation guys through week 1, nothing looked better.
So we got the Giants at number 31 in the power rankings. Yeah. I mean, these are your former Giants, buddy. This
is why
Malik Neighbors was targeted on 13% of the routes that he ran. In this offense, he should be targeted on 100% of routes that he runs. He is their only good player.
The problem is you also have a terrible quarterback, which was my entire argument against Malik Neighbors inside the top 20-25. We just did that recently. And the example I kept bringing up was Devontae Adams from last year with 175 targets, still only wide receiver 18 in points per game with 8 touchdowns, which aren't coming from Daniel Jones in this offense. You're not wrong. Maybe Malik Neighbors does kind of get that volume going for it. Like he should be, I know you say tongue in cheek 100%, but he should be getting the Cooper Kupp 40-something% that we saw last night, obviously because Nakua got hurt and left the game, but 40% should be where Neighbors is hovering. But the problem is, Daniel Jones, if anybody watched that game, by the way, I'm sorry for you having to do the same, but watching it in the quad box and everything is just, even when Daniel Jones had time, it's just, he doesn't know what to do. And then if there's pressure in his face, he doesn't know what to do. Even worse. There was times where like he missed Neighbors on one where like there was no pressure. He just threw it. Oh no, it was actually the one that Neighbors made that leaping catch where he almost got intercepted. He like almost overthrew Neighbors. He somehow got it just over the defender, probably because he was overthrowing Neighbors. And then the guy coming from screen side anyway, there was a guy coming up behind Daniel Jones, but he had an extra second or two to just take that extra beat and lead Neighbors. And it could have even been a bigger play. And that's my point, is that Daniel Jones, even when not under pressure, has pressure in his mind.
Jalen Hyatt's simply not playing for them. He only played 15 snaps. It was basically Neighbors was out there. Neighbors played every single offensive snap. So that's at least good news that he's always going to be on the field. Yeah. That it was Slayton and then Wendell, depending on which rotation they ended up going through, then Hyatt. But Theo Johnson played 61% of the snaps.
Johnson, yeah.
I just don't know if there's enough in this offense. Like, in my mind, hey, those should be easy completions, but he had 1 for 18. That did hit his over on Underdog Pick'em, which was nice because I had the 17.5 under on Theo Johnson. He got the catch late, and that was the end of me. But I looked at my tight end pickups for the week. Like, he's 7 of the 8 guys that I have listed. Like, I just don't think there's any upside there. Maybe he evolves and ends up being someone that you can rely on for 5-6 targets a game, but I just don't know how much faith I want to put into that. Maybe this week against Washington is more the move.
It could be the move, but this could also just be the opposite of the immovable object versus the unstoppable force. It could be just what's the opposite, this antithesis of that. There's plenty. Like, I pick up Colby Parkinson. I had a week in 1 mostly because Jordan Rodriguez for the Athletic was like, oh, he'll be a sleeper. And I was like, I don't want to roll my eyes at a tight end sleeper of Colby Parkinson, but if she said it and we saw the involvement there, so Parkinson, Gesicki, obviously, if Higgins is out, I'd have to go kind of down 5 or 6 guys before I got to Theo Johnson, simply as you said, because of the offense.
I mean, it's because Gesicki wasn't even really out there for the Bengals. Parkinson, I actually have number 3 in the pickups. He's like the completely unowned guy that you can go pick up if you need someone.
Who do you have in front of him?
Isaiah Likely and Taysom Hill.
Okay, yeah.
And then Parkinson. We'll get to all of these pickups are in the newsletter if you just want to see the cheat sheet for them, but we'll talk this through a little bit later on. Again, you can just jump around. All right, so those are the Giants and Panthers, the 2 worst teams. Who did you have at team number 30?
I actually went back and forth between 29 and 30, but I put the Commanders at 30.
I had the Commanders at 32. Well, not 32, at 30, comma, at 30. Not even comma, 2 as well.
There you go. Yeah, I went back and forth on a few, but it's really like their defense is as bad as it was last year.
It's wretched. It's dreadful. And listen,
the problem is
I was going to say, Jaden Daniels is going to be a great fantasy asset. Outside of like Brian Robinson stealing a touchdown from Jaden Daniels, I really don't know until he gets into a groove who else. Like, I was high on McLaurin coming into the year. McLaurin should have caught a 75-yard touchdown. He missed it by his step. Like, you put a little bit less on the ball, it's a fantastic completion. But just all those intermediate passes, he decided to take off instead of throw them.
And that's the issue, is that this offense, everybody's like, oh, it'll be one read, and Cliff Kingsbury will be able to do what he do with Kyle Murray and everything. Like, so far, as you said, like, Daniels needs to be comfortable. But also, I don't get this. Like, I don't understand why they're doing this offense with Daniels. It kind of goes back to has nothing to do with it. But there are a lot of people who love to hate and also love to watch Notre Dame. And I'm bringing in a comparison here. Is Notre Dame for years that made the same mistake that they've been making, is like you bring in a quarterback and then you don't use their strengths, and then you just look like they did and got upset by Northern Illinois. This is Jaden Daniels throws a great deep ball. Jaden Daniels throws big plays and touchdowns. Yeah, of course, people are like, well, he missed Terry McLaurin by a step. Yeah, but 50% of those hit, and that's Daniels can hit those. And even anything into the 15 to 20 to 25 range, there's just everything looks like they're calling plays to make him look short and make a quick decision. But the quick decision, as you brought up, seems to be there's not first read, I'm running. And Terry McLaurin ran wide left most of the game. I just don't understand what they're trying to do. It almost feels like they're making an offense that uses some of his strengths and trying to make Daniels do it. And I don't think this is going to work. This is a severe concern for somebody who had a lot of Daniels this year. Fortunately, as you brought up, the rushing will offset it. But for the passing game, I'm concerned going forward.
Yeah, listen, if Justin Fields throws for a touchdown against Atlanta, he has a really nice fantasy day. Then we take a look at Jaden Daniels. Obviously, he didn't throw for a touchdown. It had almost 30 fantasy points. So there's a reason that you draft these guys, and that is the reason right there. The baked-in floor that you're always going to get from the rushing with all of that upside on top of it. Like, I have a ton of Jaden Daniels. I just, after watching week 1, I think he's pretty solidified as probably like a top 7 at minimum quarterback.
Yeah, well, I mean, you could argue too, like if he doesn't run one of those in, as you said, if Brian Robinson takes it instead, it's going to be interesting to see how much he continues to do that. If he continues to call his own number in that fashion, or just takes off, or if it's kind of like reined back a little bit, because he is not Josh Allen, he is not Jalen Hurts. He's more in that range. Well, it's Anthony Richardson, and like what happens if he gets hurt. Although Anthony Richardson still didn't seem to change what he was doing from last year. So the upside's potentially, I don't know if I would say definitively top 6 or 7, which actually that's where I was pushing him in my preseason ranks. I'd say I'd actually pull him back a spot or two, but it's still top 10. Like it wasn't great at times. and we're going to talk about them, I'm sure. But Arizona and Kyler Murray, I probably still barely take Kyler Murray, but I think he's in the conversation.
I would not take Kyler Murray. Actually, Arizona was the last team that I didn't put in my bottom 10, so they would be the 11th worst team based on what I saw in week 1. They had a good 17 minutes of offense, and that was it from them.
That's why I was considering them for my bottom 10.
And their defense, probably not so great. Although it's against Josh Allen, so it's really hard to tell that once he starts going into full Josh Allen mode, he's very difficult to stop unless you have a truly elite defense. So just a few notes about the Washington receiving corps. Noah Brown was inactive for that game. So basically, the way it worked out, it was McLaurin, and then it was Luke McCaffrey, Diami Brown, and Zacchaeus, and they kind of played a rotation. And then you had Jamison Crowder. And I'm not going to turn my back on McLaurin because of one bad week from a guy in his first ever start. But right now, looking at it, it's McLaurin, it's Brian Robinson, and it's Daniels. Those are the only 3 guys I would consider starting.
Yes, and so I actually asked before the weekend, I was like, hey, Ben Standig, he covers the Commanders for The Athletic. I'm like, what's the answer? Who is the number 2? And his response back was Austin Eckler / Brian Robinson. It was Diami Brown could do a 3 for 80 type of day or 1 for nothing. Actually, he got a big fat 0. And he said McCaffrey hadn't really done anything all preseason. They might have been trying to hide him or, just kind of keep that under wraps. He looked okay at times, but he, again, slot answer. And then he went down the list and included all the other guys. But then what he said if Noah Brown was here the entire time, he would actually be the pick. So I'm not excited about him yet. In a deeper 14-team league or super deep benches, I'd probably stash Noah Brown, especially after what we saw last year in 3 of those 4 games when healthy. But he actually said Noah Brown would have been his pick if he was there the entire time because there is no answer on the team right now.
Yeah, and Noah Brown makes a lot of sense for this offense. He can run those short crossing routes, and he can do everything after the catch, which is kind of perfect when you have a mobile quarterback. The defense has to account for that. Get one guy out of position, all of a sudden Brown can make them pay. So I actually do like Brown as the season goes along, but the fact that he was inactive is not great. Between the running backs, it was a 33-31 split between Brian Robinson over Austin Eckler. They played on the field at the same time. What was it, 8 times, 9 times, something like that. But Brian Robinson got all the high leverage touches. He got the goal line touches. He got the short down yardage, and it was a lot of third downs from Austin Eckler. And on third down, Jaden Daniels is far, unless it's they both had 4 targets in this game, and all the Brian Robinson ones seem to be scripted screens to Brian Robinson. Whereas you're not going to get as many of these checkdowns as you would like on 3rd and long from Daniels to Eckler because Daniels is simply going to take off.
Yep. And I have probably nothing to add to that. Yeah, 100%. The Brian Robinson plays look pre-designed, and that goes back to the entire offense. It just seems to be a very conservative, short game offense so far.
Titans, I have at number 29.
They're not quite there. I'm actually going with the Raiders.
Oh, the Raiders. The Raiders, I have 2 spots ahead. So my next 3 teams are Tennessee, Denver, and Vegas, working down. So 29.
The same 20, 3, just different order.
28. So I'm glad that we're on the same tier here. I don't really have much of a differentiation between Vegas and Denver at this point. I just think that Vegas's defense theoretically should be better, and at least they have decent playmakers on. I mean, they have Devontae Adams. That's probably enough. Zamir White owns 12 horses, I found out during the broadcast, which is pretty nice. But Denver was. They had the 2 safeties early on. Their defense wasn't an absolute train wreck, but the more that game went on, the more they couldn't stop the run, and that's all Seattle wanted to do, was just pound it down your throat. DK Metcalf looked a little bit banged up, and Surtain did a good job on him. Lockett looked a bit banged up. JSN didn't do much. Fant looked kind of banged up. And then Seattle lost George Fant on the offensive line, and somehow that made them better at running the ball. But Walker just bowling balled them until they finally broke down, and if you weren't standing 20 yards behind the line of scrimmage, Bo Nix wasn't going to pass to you.
Yeah, and so I go to all that, and kind of some of the arguments I would make for the Broncos over the Raiders is that the defense was good at times. It was Bo Nix's first start, and was surprised Bo Nix is Bo Nix, but that's why Sean Payton's going to call this dump down, dump off offense. The interesting thing of everything that you just said there was one word that wasn't mentioned, is Jaleel McLaughlin was the lead question mark.
Yeah, and Javonte was playing all the third downs and during the 2-minute drill. Yes. It was really bizarre.
It was. And if that's something going forward, all the excitement that we got late, so depending on when you drafted, you're either super excited because it was the McLaughlin pick that we got late. Actually, he never really got that high, but you got the bigger discount if you drafted late. But if you drafted late, Javonte Williams doesn't look as good as we thought he was going to be once the cut and everything was like, hey, Javonte Williams is actually fine. He's 100%. Peyton likes him. So depending on when you drafted, you're either disappointed with Williams or really excited with Jaleel McLaughlin.
Tennessee's defense might be good, or Chicago's offense is incredibly inept. I think it's probably some mix of the two, but yeah, I'm not completely out on Tennessee's defense. Their offense, not so hot. Treylon Burks was the one who played over DeAndre Hopkins on Sunday. So it was a lot of Calvin Ridley, a lot of Tyler Boyd, and then you'd think it would be Hopkins, but he has like a broken kneecap or something like that. So he played 17 snaps and ran incredibly slowly. And I was wondering if it was going to be Nick Westbrook-Ikhine who was the next up, but it wasn't. It actually was Treylon Burks.
Yeah, which not too excited about.
No.
And the excitement of what Brian Callahan could do for that. You know, it's interesting. Like it wasn't terrible. It didn't look good. A part of that has to do with Will Levis. There was flashes that made it look a little bit better than last year with Callahan. And then not saying I'm going to pull the Bengals into like but like the Bengals offense looked like maybe Callahan was more of it than we thought, even though the whole thing is Zach Taylor was calling everything is, I don't know. You can't just tell me you lose T. Higgins and your offense looks that bad. And so I'm saying that to say there were a little bit of signs that the Titans do have some hope. Again, it's week 1. I'm not saying the Titans are going to be a playoff team. I have a little bit more hope for Will Levis if you're in Superflex. I have a little bit more hope for this team. But the big takeaway, again, which I know you're going to bring up next, so you might as well go to it, is the running backfield. Similar, not necessarily drive-wise, but Pollard was the clear lead running back, and the pass catcher was not him as much, but it was definitively Spears' role from last year. Spears didn't really change.
But this is good, though. I don't mind this. Like, it sucks if you have Tajee Spears that he's not going to have this lead role, but at least based on what we saw week 1, and listen, that's all we have to go on right now, is that they have definitive roles that we can project. So in games, like the Titans led for most of that game. And it's not like the Bears' offense was scoring. It was their defense and special teams that were scoring. So if you get the Titans, like they play the Jets next week, that's probably not great. But you're going to find these games where they're going to be down by a touchdown or down by 10 points a lot of the time. Spears is going to play like 70% of the snaps in those games.
Yeah, so after the Jets, Packers, Dolphins, Colts, Bills, Lions. So sell high on Tony Pollard.
Yeah, so Pollard played 32 of the first down snaps he was on the field for 35 of the 43 first downs that the Titans had. He played 0 snaps inside 2 minutes of each of the halves, and he played 1 of 13 third downs. Spears played all those other snaps.
Yeah. So there you go. So, like I said, sell high on Tony Pollard.
Sell high on Tony Pollard and play some overs on Tajee Spears' receiving numbers on Underdog Fantasy. Code Mayo at Underdog Fantasy, by the way. Get yourself that deposit bonus of up to $1,000. And Monday Night Football, the kickoff, is the lock of the $25,000 Pick'em contest. So if you're not in that as of yet, I'm giving away $25,000. You just got to play in a contest. The link is down in the description. It's a Google form. It takes less than 10 seconds to fill out. All you need is an email address, which I'm guessing you have, and an Underdog handle. You have those 2 things, you can be in the contest. $5,000 to first place. So if you're just playing around, you can play this entire contest, Jake, for $23 if you want to. For the year.
Which is pretty nice. Yeah, pretty nice.
You can play it for as much or for as little as you want, but it's just a percentage of picks that you get right in Pick'em. So if you're in Texas or California, it's perfect. So you can play the prop game on Underdog there. And even if you're in Florida, or any state that has Underdog champions, those count towards this pool as well. So I'd highly recommend, if you don't have an Underdog account, go use code Mayo right now and get signed up. Here's a Raiders note for you. Madison played more than Zamir White, this we know, and Zamir White has 12 horses. Madison played 9 of 9 third downs and 10 of 11 plays in under 2 minutes left in the half, both in the first half and second half, which that's not great for everyone who invested in Zamir White.
No, it's not. The real concern about Zamir White is we knew this. We knew that the passing game work was a concern, that he would lose some of that, if not a significant chunk of it. And while, flyers on Dylan Labe, the rookie, but obviously Alexander Mattison. And I'm still not that concerned about Alexander Mattison as the runner because it's Alexander Mattison. But Zamir White yesterday, the real answer here is he's just not going to be involved. And how many games are the Raiders going to lead? And, they'll be say, well, Zamir White at times didn't look great, but also the play calling at the time. The thing that I feel good about if you want to try and find a positive, is Zamir White fumbled, and the very next play they went back to him. Actually called a run play in the very next play. So he's clearly still the lead on short yards, first down, maybe second. And that's why I said, like, he's first down in short yardage, but second down might already be a passing play. It might already be Alexander Madison. So I don't know how you can start Zamir White unless you think the Raiders are going to keep it close the entire game. And how many games do you really think that's going to happen for Zamir White and the Raiders?
Well, as the 27th ranked power rank team in my rankings, probably not that much.
No. Did they get the Panthers or the Giants? I don't think so.
I don't think they do. Number 26, I have the Patriots, the 1-0 Patriots. And the reason that they're not lower is because their defense is legitimately good. Their offense sucks.
Oh, yeah, there's no question about that. I mean, what we're going to get with Jacoby Brissett. Like, this is why I thought Hunter Henry would be a fine Flyers, because all he does is throw short into his tight ends. I have no argument with the Patriots. I was going back and forth between the Patriots, and I'll see when we get to them. But I have no problem with this.
Yeah,
we'll see if your next pick is the same.
Well, my next three for 25, 24, and 23, I'll just list them off. So I have New England at 26, the Saints at 25, Cleveland at 24, and the Vikings at 23. I originally had Arizona there, and I moved them out. And like I think New Orleans can win a bunch of games. I think Cleveland can win a bunch of games. I think Minnesota can win a bunch of games. Like, they're not on that tier of the Patriots and the other teams that we talked about. But the Patriots, like, the way that you should look at the Patriots, I think, is a lot like the Jets from last year. Like, can their defense be good enough to get them to like 6 wins? It could be.
It could be, and we differ a little bit now. Now we're starting to get a little bit different in our bottom 10.
I think this is a better way to talk about the fantasy implications of these games, by the way.
I think it is too. It makes it more interesting. So I was going to say the Browns, as I went back and forth and putting the Browns this low, but I actually would put the Browns next. I think the Browns are awful. I don't even care about their defense being good. It doesn't matter when your offense is that terrible with that terrible of a quarterback. Like, you can have a good defense all you want. And you go back to like the Raiders, and I know they're a better defense than the Raiders, but I mean, how many games are you going to win only solely on your defense? So I have the Browns here. People are going to lose their mind, but I would have the Bears here. Cardinals, not quite, but the Cardinals did make my bottom 10. Actually, in between there, I don't even have the Vikings, but I consider them. They're the ones that just barely missed a cut. And, you know, if we win another spot or two, I would say the Vikings. But who run off your list again, because I want to see the same ones that we did and didn't have.
So after Vegas, starting at 26, I had the Patriots, then the Saints, Browns, and Vikings. And the reason that I have the Saints and Vikings down here is because they beat the 2 worst teams in football and look good doing it. Let them play a real team and see how they do. Like, Minnesota's defense, what, best defense in the league all of a sudden? Or do they absolutely suck, but Daniel Jones sucks?
That's certainly fair, but I think the Saints have a good defense, and I think if Derek Carr bounced back enough, that I think Derek Carr had like arguably his worst career season last year, and they didn't have Kamara for part of it. They have Kamara to start this year. Jamal Williams looks better. It's just one game, and it's who they're playing, as you mentioned. But Jamal Williams looks a little bit. We'd have to wait 17 weeks to get his touchdown. I'm just saying, like, the Saints didn't even use Chris Olave really, and walked away with this. Again, the team they placed was god awful.
That's the thing. Like, I bet on the Saints to win that division at 4-1 because I think that every team in that division kind of sucks. So, and coming out of week 1, the only team that I think that might be okay is Tampa Bay. But again, they played Washington, so who knows?
I agree with you there. So there's 2 that I swap out. I swap out the Saints and the Vikings for, as I mentioned, the Cardinals. The Cardinals are my very last. They're my 22. They're 23 actually. Last of the bottom 10. Right in front of them, it's my Falcon. It's your Falcons. I was about to say is what I should have said. Like, you don't want to ever trust the Falcons. Kirk Cousins is not okay, and like you go to like it's you're laughing like. So I looked at this. I was already going down this road, and then Field Yates tweeted out the fact that they ran shotgun and pistol a hell of a lot. Shotgun, they never ran the ball, and then pistol, they never ran the ball, or almost all. Shotgun, they never ran the ball. Pistol, they ran the ball almost like 85% of the time. And if you go back and look, and I started looking at the play-by-play, and the only time the entire game they even tried a play action was the weakest example, if you could give, of a play action, because it was from shotgun when they were in their own end zone. And it was like, it was a half of a handoff. And Bijan was kind of like, oh, look, I took. And then he tried to throw it left on a freaking wide receiver screen that got batted down. Kirk Cousins can't drop back. He's not even backpedaling. Like this is, and then their defense is kind of like I'm severely concerned about Drake London and the freaking Falcons right now.
I would just be worried about their offensive line. And I don't know if it's actually that bad or TJ Watt is just that good. It's probably some combination of the two. But their offensive and defensive lines, they can't win in the trenches at all. And that was against a Pittsburgh offensive line, which isn't great. Now, their D-line and their defense is awesome. So you're going to see teams look bad against Pittsburgh. So that's why I gave them a bit of a mulligan for this week. But if it happens again, I mean, I'll be in my glory if Atlanta sucks because everyone is on them. I just didn't it's not like I think they're a 3-14 team, but like pump the brakes on this team being awesome because they have fucking Kirk Cousins.
Then they might not have Kirk Cousins. They might have bad cousins.
They might have bad cousins. So here are some notes about some of these teams. A.T. Perry didn't play for the Saints, and Cedric Wilson was the one who actually filled in for him the most in that spot. And then there was a bunch of garbage time stuff, which really doesn't matter. No Patriots wide receiver played more than 61% of the snaps. KJ Osborne played the most with 39 snaps, but Super DeMario was the one who ended up running the most routes at 22. Osborne ended up with 6 targets because he was on the field so much on only 14 routes run. So he is going to be on the field a ton because he can block, is essentially what that says. Hunter Henry and Ramondre were the two who were on the field the most. Ramondre is the only actual start probably every single week from all of these guys. And Henry is fringe because he's actually running routes where Austin Hooper is blocking mainly.
Yep, there you go. And the biggest answer, you said the Falcons, and everybody was trying to figure out the Patriots, and you know what I kept saying is I don't want any of them. Not a single one. Stevenson was the only one I would consider as my low, like in the low end RB2, RB3 range, depending on where he's probably your RB2. Not yours, but everybody's out there. But maybe Hunter Henry. But I wanted nothing to do with these wide receivers because the biggest answer here is even if we get some kind of pecking order, I mean, even if we got somebody to 80%, it's still the Patriots offense. It's still Brissett until we get Drake May at some point in the middle of the season. And then maybe by that point, Jalen Polk is ready to do something, but I still, nope, nothing to do with the Patriots.
Gerald Everett doubled up Cole Kmet snaps for the Bears, by the way.
Yeah, Cole Kmet is like my 21st tight end for this. Like, I don't even care. I don't even care if it's Gerald Everett. I don't care. It's 3 wide receivers, and 3 wide receiver offenses do not allow tight ends to do anything.
Okay. Some more notes here. Devon Vale. He was the 3rd behind Cortland Sutton and Josh Reynolds for Denver. Any interest? He had 8 targets.
No, because it's the Broncos offense, and he's the 3rd. If he pecked his way up to number 2, then sure, because it's going to be peppering short, and you're hoping for a Demario Douglas type of Demario Douglas. That's how you have to do it. But even then, wide receiver 4.5 in full point PPR. What's the excitement there?
What if he was Demario Douglas and I'm going to win
and run you over with his little motorcycle thing?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
You watch out for Wario. Maybe then. For a big man, he's very sneaky, very limber.
He's one of the best picks that you use in Mario Kart.
I don't have Tampa in my top or bottom, but there was a few Tampa notes that I had. Jaden McMillan and wife played the most snaps of any Tampa Bay receiver over Godwin and Evans. Additionally, and he ran the most routes, and Rashad White doubled up Bucky Irving in snaps, but White took every goal line snap, and he played 10 of 12 third down. So every important touch still went to Rashad White, even though it was a bit closer in snap share, like people had predicted, but all the important touches still went to White. So he's pretty safe for right now.
For right now, I'd still have my eye on Irving. I have my entire preseason, and still the fact that he looked good. The interesting thing was, I would still take White in the passing game. And this is why I'm saying super deep stash. Obviously, if White got hurt, but whereas Irving taking over, I don't really think it's going to happen because White still looks better in the passing game. So if Irvin is going to do anything, it's going to kind of force a 50-50 split where he's now the lead. But as you mentioned, the important snap still went to White, so I don't think he's even close to that yet. But it's at least interesting. You brought up Jalen McMillan. I'll bring up 2 interesting points for rookies. McMillan and Adonai Mitchell, 2 big plays, both of them left on the field, where one of them turns into a touchdown, and we're talking about how great these rookies look. All the opportunities out there, and they both had ones barely missed by their quarterbacks.
Well, there's also Marvin Harrison, who had no one around him for 70 yards, and Kyler Murray's just too much of a mini-man to see him.
I actually think Kyler Murray was pissed off at that point. Like, that's the thing. Like,
to not throw to the open guy to win the game?
No. I don't think he saw him. But I think he had already kind of checked out Marvin Harrison at that point. There was something, and my buddy actually thought it was more what's the word I'm looking for? Egregious than he thought it was. Like, he thought that, like, Kyler was like, I remember Kyler was pissed off. And I was like, he basically threw his arm up at him. But it was the first target where Harrison was running go, and he threw it as the comeback. Murray did, and just went out of bounds. And then they kind of looked at each other, and Murray was staring him down. Look, there was 2 more attempts after that. One was a drop, which didn't happen, and then there was the 4-yard completion, and that was it. That was the end. There was no more targets. Marvin Harrison didn't have a single target the rest of the game, and I'm not saying he did that on purpose. I just think Murray, maybe it was rookie frustrations, maybe it was just Harrison and him still aren't on the same page, whatever it was, but Murray didn't look at him basically for the rest of the game. And that's at least a little bit like, I'm still starting Marvin Harrison. But again, I'm bringing up that play as different than McMillan and Mitchell's because the throws were actually there and they just missed them by this much. Actually, one of them was called back on a penalty too. But all that being said is like there was something off with Murray and Harrison in the first game that like worried me just a smidge.
A few years back, the irons were the best part of my golf game. But after a swing change about 2.5 years ago, my driver's an absolute weapon at this point, but all of a sudden I couldn't hit my long irons, and even some of my short irons just were not going on the same trajectory that I always wanted them to, or at least that they used to do. So when I heard how the new PXG Black Ops irons can dramatically improve my game, of course I had to give them a try, anything to improve my golf game. So I called up PXG and I got my current irons and I took the PXG Irons Challenge and it has been amazing. The consistency off the club face is unparalleled to any club that I have ever used. Best thing about these irons is because I feel so comfortable that I'm gonna hit the sweet spot on them, I can control the club face, the high, the low, the cut, the draw, no problem. And the new PXG Black Ops irons are the game improvement missile launchers that are going to give you explosive distance, and it's going to feel softer than a baby bunny. The new Black Ops irons are incredibly easy to hit and maximize performance and fun, because getting better is fun. Oh, and they're only $149.99 a stick. That's a great price for a great golf iron. Take the PXG Irons Challenge. It's a ton of fun, and if PXG's new Black Ops irons don't outperform your current irons by delivering either more distance or tighter dispersion, that means better accuracy, during your fitting, you'll get a $100 MasterCard rewards card. Hurry! This offer ends October 7th. Book your fitting today at pxg.com. That's pxg.com. Passion, drive, patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Supercharger, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your #1 ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want. It's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Kids are always learning and growing, but as adults, sometimes we lose that curiosity. What's something you'd like to learn? Gardening? A new language? Or, for me personally, how to finally beat your best friend in golf. Not Cuss, but, my other friends. I want to beat them at golf. I can beat Cuss, no problem. Therapy can help reconnect you with your sense of wonder because your back-to-school era can come, honestly, at any age. It's helpful learning positive coping skills and how to set boundaries, and it empowers you to be the best version of yourself. It isn't just for those who've experienced major traumas. If you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. all the best things that you need. Just fill out a brief questionnaire and get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Rediscover your curiosity with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/PatMayo today and get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/PatMayo. Let's talk about some pickups before we get to the top 10 in the power rankings. Is there anyone at running back that you would make a focus to pick up? Because in terms of injuries, we'll see what happens with McCaffrey tonight, but it looks like he's going to play. Like I think, we always talk about it's on Yahoo. You can still do it if you have the open bench spot to rotate all your primetime handcuff running backs. I think that Jordan Mason right now with Elijah Mitchell on IR is the best backup you can have, and he's probably free for you to go pick up right now. God forbid anything happened to Christian McCaffrey, you're going to want Jordan Mason.
100%. There's no question about it. Honestly, and I know there's probably been a mix with Isaiah Davis and others, but Braylon Allen too. If Mason's already taken, just Braylon Allen, because if something happens to Breece Hall, God forbid, then you're going to want him.
Yeah, in terms of injuries, Kenneth Walker hurt his ab. He's got 7-minute abs, but it looks like he's going to be okay. If not, like if Charbonnet is out there, go pick him up, although it's not a great matchup against the Patriots this week. Marshawn Lloyd didn't play because of his hamstring in the Brazil game, but he should be back this time around. But Lord knows what that offense looks like with Malik Willis starting at quarterback instead of Jordan Love. And then you said Achane got hurt. I didn't see it, but I guess it's a real thing.
So he left in the middle of the game, came back, and then his last carry, there's concerns that he aggravated it or a brand new injury. Just he left and never came back. And if you watch the video, it looked like he kind of tweaked something. We'll find out today, maybe Tuesday. Maybe it's a nothing burger. But if you look at it, Jalen Wright sitting out there, there's a lot of people who dropped Jalen Wright, also inactive.
But I think he's inactive because they trust I mean, I thought they had turned to Jeff Wilson late in that game because he's the one who doesn't fumble. But maybe it's because
which is possible.
Because Mostert hurt his shoulder early in the game, and that limited his snaps.
Yeah.
If Achane ended up getting banged up too, so maybe that's the only reason that Jeff Wilson was there. But I just think that if you're gonna they have Wright. Maybe he's a big game player if one of these guys gets hurt. But it just seems like they want to use Jeff Wilson way more than any of us want to think is possible.
I'm leaning a little bit more too as they want Jeff Wilson as the trustworthy, as you're bringing up, as the trustworthy 3. But if you're replacing Achane as the fit, who takes the Achane role, I think it's Jalen Wright.
Any other running backs you can think of?
J.K. Dobbins if he's out there, and he's actually out there in quite a few leagues.
How many leagues is he out there in?
He was under 50% over on Yahoo, which is crazy.
Okay, then he would be the number one pickup then.
Yeah, 100%.
So
and so McLaughlin, if he's still out there, McLaughlin's in a lot of leagues. Even though we talk about
I don't know if I wouldn't go pick him up. I don't think he's any good. Listen, you're stuck if you have Javonte Williams on your team. I don't know. I would still rather have him than McLaughlin rest of the season. But if you pick up McLaughlin, what are you really getting out of that? 8 points a game? He's like the bad J.D. McKissick.
No, I actually think he's on the J.D. McKissick good ranges. I actually think he is an RB3. I like McLaughlin, the talent. That's really come down to is the fact of what he's been able to do with the ball last year. Again, it's the offense, so you're capped here. But you say not pick him up, but people are going to need running backs, and we already need running backs. So as a 3, I'm not saying blow your budget and go crazy for him. He's put it this way: if you had Fab, I'd throw $1 to see if you got it, maybe 2. I'm not saying go crazy for him.
Okay, outside of Dobbins, is there any running back that you would spend more than $1
on? If P. Ryan is out there.
Yeah, but I don't think you'd need to spend more than $1. If he wasn't already owned, are people going to be just rushing to the waiver wire and be like, oh man, I need P. Ryan who barely played?
No, it comes down to the whole fact if Isaiah Pacheco gets hurt, similar to Jordan Mason. If they're out there, I would spend more than $1 because some people's waivers don't open up before week 1. Some of them open up after week 1. So I'm just thinking of what's out there.
Yeah, so Dobbins 49% in Yahoo leagues, Zach Charbonnet 47% owned in Yahoo leagues, Jordan Mason 38%, Jaleel McLaughlin number 37%. Other than that, Roschon Johnson was a healthy scratch for the game, although he was dealing with a toe injury coming into the week. But that's all I can really see right now, unless you're actively going after handcuffs. Dobbins, then Charbonnet would be my 1-2, then Jordan Mason.
Yeah. I'm good with that.
Wide receivers, we don't know the extent of Puka's injury. So here are the guys that got hurt. Jordan Addison retweaked the same ankle that he had been dealing with. Keenan Allen came up limp towards the end of the game. He had been dealing with a heel injury, the same injury that he had towards the end of last season. He never returned after that. Jerry Jeudy left the game for the Browns. No big deal there, I suppose. Josh Downs did not play in the game. T. Higgins did not play in the game. Puka left the game, re-aggravating the same knee injury he had in the preseason. A.T. Perry didn't play, and Hollywood Brown didn't play. I think it's got to be Demarcus Robinson if you don't own him.
That's where I was going to go. Demarcus Robinson, outside of some starters who maybe had a quiet first week. Like, I'd still go for Joshua Palmer because if Nakua is only out for 1 to 2 weeks, Demarcus Robinson would be somebody I still pick up. But I think the interesting one, though, is if you're going super deep and you do have leagues that drafted Demarcus Robinson, of course, this is
Tyler Johnson?
Tyler Johnson, I'm watching that game and I'm just like, is that Tyler Johnson? And it is. Remember the excitement for Tyler Johnson with the Buccaneers? And when it was even before Nakua got hurt, it was when Nakua was coming in and out. He was filling Nakua's role. So, again, I think if Nakua's out, Demarcus Robinson is the 2, and Tyler Johnson's the 3. But what do we know about Stafford in this offense? Demarcus Robinson is going to get his, but that role seemed to be Tyler Johnson's. I'm not super excited. I'm looking at waivers from last week. I'd still take Dobbs, even knowing that we have to wait for him before Malik Willis, depending if you're calling for a bench stash. Again, this is assuming that Puka Nakua is only a few weeks. If Nakua is out for 8 weeks, I would actually take Tyler Johnson over Dobbs and waiting for Jordan Love to come back. But I would still take Joshua Palmer. Yes, it looked like it was Lab McConkey was going to be the one that got
Josh Palmer more. Does not qualify. 60% owned in Yahoo leagues.
Oh, so there you go. He boosted up. There you go. He boosted up since waivers ran last week.
So for deep, what about Alec Pierce? Once Josh Downs comes back, is Pierce just going to be the guy who runs deep and hopefully he catches it?
I think so. And that's
It's
fine.
not bad, actually.
No, and I would consider if you're in a 10, 12-team standard bench leagues, you can probably drop Adonai Mitchell, even though, a few plays or two and that were left on the field and we're talking about a completely different day and that Mitchell will still have excitement. Mitchell might even be a 1 or 2 week fill-in because when Downs comes back, my excitement for Mitchell last week, and we talked about it, my excitement for Mitchell was that he was running the slot after Downs left. And then during the preseason, when they dropped down to 2 wide, I guess the Colts, hey, sneaky, very good job, by the way. They hid the Pierce situation because when they dropped down to 2 wide, it was Pittman and Mitchell. Pierce came off the field. That was not what happened in week 1. Pierce was on the field. Pierce was running the second most as the number 2, and Mitchell was off the field. So if Pierce is going to stay out there, the issue is when Downs comes back, does Downs do what Mitchell was doing in the preseason and step back in as the 2, or does Pierce potentially hold his value? So I would take a chance on Pierce. I just don't know if this might be a good old the Kevin Ogletree years where it's going to be 2 really good weeks and then we don't see him ever again.
The other 2 I would mention, they're geezers at this point, but I think they could put up decent value. Brandon Cooks, who I own in a bunch of leagues just because he is he's the second option on Dallas, which is not a bad spot to be in, especially with Jake Ferguson hurt now. And then Mike Williams is only owned in 43% of leagues. Why not take that chance? He's good. It's just, how healthy is he? We don't know.
I've been saying that all preseason, and he might be. Reports are a limited snap count during this game tonight. So, but Mike Williams, when healthy, top 25 wide receiver, 100% guaranteed. And if Aaron Rodgers is healthy, Mike Williams might lead this team in touch. Actually, he should. If you told me both of them stayed healthy for at least 16 out of 17 games, he should lead this team in touchdowns, and he'll be a top 25 wide receiver. So, 100% Mike Williams. The number 2, I would take the chance on Mike Williams before tonight and going forward. The number 2 is actually Shaheed.
Shaheed's 2 owned. He's 54%, unfortunately.
Oh, you do 50? I do 60.
I do 50.
Okay.
So I love Shaheed. Shaheed, yes. Shaheed would be number 1 on my list too, but he doesn't qualify.
Okay. Fair enough.
So I have Demarcus Robinson, Mike Williams, Brendan Cooks, Alec Pierce is the top 4 for me.
Yeah, I'm good with those.
Tight ends.
I don't think there's anybody else.
Here's where I went. So the injuries there's one big one and one that looks like we might dodge something. I originally thought that Jake Ferguson had torn his ACL. You're saying we still don't know. He still needs the MRI, but he might not be out for the season. He might even miss time. So we'll wait and see on that. But David Njoku looks like he has a high ankle sprain. He's out 3 to 6 weeks. Now, again, this works out better for fantasy owners because if you drafted Njoku, you'd be forced to play him, but he's unplayable. So now you don't have to play him. This is great news.
It is great news. We tried to warn people about David Njoku all preseason. So, hey, look, sometimes your own mistakes can be avoided by an injury.
Listen, if he comes back and somehow Watson is gone and Jameis is in, Njoku's going to be fine. It's just Deshaun Watson is a black hole of fantasy value.
I think he's a black hole, period. let's put it that way.
So the pickups I have at tight end. So, and again, this is under 50%. Isaiah Likely is an auto pickup. He's probably the best pickup of the week, right?
Yeah, for every position, probably.
So
unless Christian McCaffrey were to get hurt tonight.
Yeah. So Isaiah Likely, Taysom Hill, Colby Parkinson, Noah Fant would be my top 4 at tight end.
I would go Hunter Henry before Fant.
I went actually Jordan Akins and then Hunter Henry because Jordan Akins might, for a guy that you can randomly pick up. I know I just said Deshaun Watson's a black hole. However, like he could just end up with like 7 targets a game because he's the guy who stands in front of Deshaun Watson.
I don't care. No, I have no interest. I have no interest in Njoku. I have no interest in Akins. No, you can have him.
All right, so I'll put Hunter Henry above Noah Fant. So I'll go Likely, Hill, Colby Parkinson, and Noah Fant. Quarterback, do you want to talk through the Jordan Love situation, or is this something that we just need to see play out and what this offense looks like with Malik Willis?
Yeah, I don't know what much there is to talk through because it's basically try to avoid starting any of them because
no, I think you can start Reed. They will manufacture touches for Reed, be it short routes, deep passes, or jet sweeps. They will get him the ball.
He's not going to catch the deep passes. Like
he might. Well, remember that like combine video of Malik Willis throwing it 140 yards? He can throw it deep.
Sure. Is it going to be on target?
That's
who knows? The question.
Well, they just need to listen. Here's why Shane Steichen. I didn't bring this up, and I probably should during the power rankings. But why Shane Steichen is a much better coach than all of these other guys who had the rookies. Like Anthony Richardson didn't have a good game in real life, but they did the things well that he does well. The opposite of what Dan Quinn in Washington did with Jaden Daniels. They basically said, hey, phony Tony, here's what you're going to do. You're going to hand the ball off to Jonathan Taylor. You're going to run the ball. You're going to look for Michael Pittman on 4-yard passes that are wide open, and you're just going to bomb it down the field. Those are the 4 types of plays that we're running. Here's how you know Dan Quinn is a terrible coach. He didn't go for 2, down by 9 against Tampa at the end of the third quarter. There was like 2 minutes left in the third quarter. If he goes for 2, they get down by 8. They're only down by 1 score. He's like, nah, we'll just kick the extra point. Don't worry about it. Like, how big of a moron do you need to be in 2024 to do that? Like, or are you Antonio Pierce, like punting on 4th and 1, like down by 6 in the fourth quarter? Like, what's happening here?
Like, I have no explanation. Like, what do you want me? What answer do you want me to give? It was stupid.
Yeah, they need to hire you.
But here's my whole issue with the thing is like the Packers. I don't think we got clarity out of week 1. I think we got clarity on who is super dynamic and why you want to manufacture touches for Jaden Reed. But it comes down to Watson still reign as the 1. Dobbs, for all intents and purposes, was actually the 1-ish. In routes and everything, but it's Watson, Dobbs, and then Reed has been the 3, which was my concern of Reed going into this entire season. And if it was Jordan Love was 100% fine, I'd be like, yeah, I was excited about Reed as the best all-around talent. I still think Wicks has an argument for that, but as the 3, it doesn't matter that he was the 3 because, as you said, with Love, they were going to find ways and then the big plays and getting open. So it would be Reed, and then depending on the matchup would actually determine how I ranked Watson and Dobbs. With Willis, and I still hope his career's not over just for him, but I don't know that you have that pecking order anymore. Like, sure, you want to try and manufacture for Jaden Reed and maybe give him some runs, and maybe that's the only reason you start him. But he'd be the one of starting them, but I don't think you can rank Jordan Reed more as like a wide receiver 4. You put him on other offenses and you say it's this mix, like go back to the Patriots. Put all 3 of them on the Patriots and Reed is the 1. You're still not starting him as more than a wide receiver 4.
This is true. So quarterback streams for week number 2 if you need him. I have Baker Mayfield at number 1 at the Lions. I have Justin Fields number 2 at Denver. Now, once I get confirmation that he is starting in week 2, I'm going to move him to number 1, but we have not got that yet from what I can see.
It's still out there. There's still a chance that they bring back Russell Wilson. And I like Justin Fields for fantasy purposes, yay, but I don't think he showed much in that game to be like, hey, let's stick with him going forward.
No, but he did everything that you would want Russell Wilson to do. Like you're playing Russell Wilson at quarterback, so you don't make mistakes, you check down, and you don't do anything stupid. Justin Fields had one bad play where they forced the fumble, they ended up recovering it. But if he can be Justin Fields without the turnovers and not do super crazy things, he's a better option than Russell Wilson is, because at least he can still just manufacture yards in these first downs with his legs, which was the huge differentiator in that game, besides TJ Watt, obviously.
There was, but in this game at Denver, I don't know if
I like it a lot.
Yeah.
I think he might rush for 100 yards.
Okay.
Because we saw
I'm not arguing him being the number 2.
Yeah, I mean, and I would move him to number 1 of the best streamers if we knew that he was starting for sure. And then I have Daniel Jones at 3 against Washington because he's going to try to run. And I don't know how much better Minnesota's defense is than Washington's. They might both be bad, and that might not make a difference against Daniel Jones. But the opportunity is there against that terrible defense, and there's not a lot of good other options for streamers.
Fair. I'm trying to think if there's is there though? Where the Saints go? Dallas? No, never mind.
Yeah.
I was gonna say maybe Derek Carr. What we got for the Raiders? Baltimore. Holy never mind. The streamer. This is a bad week for streamers.
That's how Daniel Jones ends up at number 3 on the streamer list.
I was gonna say Sam Darnold's at home against the 49ers. This sucks.
Revenge game. Sam Darnold.
Revenge game.
So the other one is, we don't know about that. Njoku out 3 to 6 weeks. Ferguson will wait and see. And then for streaming defenses for the week, if you don't realize that the Chargers at home against Carolina at 13% ownership, you need to go pick them up. You might want to quit fantasy football. And it's not to say they're going to be the best defense, but that's just a great spot. So I have the Chargers at 1, Seattle at New England number 2, Houston at home against Chicago on Sunday Night Football at number 3, Colts at Green Bay and Malik Willis number 4, and then Jacksonville at home against Cleveland for super deep leagues. New England at home against Seattle, and maybe Washington at home against the Giants because Daniel Jones.
I would throw in Detroit. Home against Tampa Bay. I know Baker Mayfield looks great, but if you tell me any given game with pressure and having to throw a lot in that environment that Baker Mayfield can't throw potentially 2 picks.
2 owned. They're above 50%.
Really?
Yeah.
Even after playing the Rams in week 1?
Yeah. People just if you're in the top 10 of our power rankings, which we'll get to in a second, your defense is probably owned from what I've found.
Okay, fair.
Okay, all of that is updated in the Mayo Media newsletter. Again, you can subscribe to that for free or just hit the link in the description. I'll update them in case news changes and all of the updated injury report in there as well. Top 10 in the power rankings. Jake, I want you to give me your list 10 to 1.
Oh, 10 to 1?
Yeah.
Oh, let me scroll down because I have to go down to it. All right. 10 to 1. You ready?
Yeah.
Without even playing a game, this will make Andercust happy. The Jets at number 10.
Okay.
You want me to keep going?
Yeah, you give your 10, I'll give my 10.
Okay, Dolphins at 9. Then Bills just in front of them. Not 100% feeling great about that. Then I would go the Cowboys, Texans, Eagles, Ravens, Lions, 49ers, Chiefs.
Okay, and I had Miami at 10, the Cowboys, Jets, Bills, Texans, Ravens, Detroit, San Francisco, Philadelphia, and Kansas City at number 1. So I think we had exactly the same 10 teams.
We have the same 10 teams, and barely different too.
Yeah, in not so different order. You can flip 3 coins, I suppose, for those AFC East teams. They're all pretty good. I too worry about the Bills, but it all just comes down to they played like crap in week 1, and Josh Allen was unstoppable.
Still,
he was stoppable on the first drive. He was stoppable when he fumbled. The turnovers are going to be a problem, but he just wills that team to victory. So here's some Bills notes for you. Wait for this one. The rotation was Coleman at the top, and then it was Mac Hollins and Shakir running about the same amount of routes in that rotation. And then it was Curtis Samuel and Marcus Valdez-Scantling. Samuel only ran 9 routes.
I don't know if that was health for the fact that he was banged up for so long, but it's at least concerning for that. I think of everything here, and I know I was one of the biggest proponents of going after Shakir, and I'm not even going to victory lap this because I am concerned about his snap count a little bit if Samuel gets healthier. Hopefully this is how it is. But the Mac Hollins one is, you want to talk about super deep in flex and super deep leagues. I took a stab at Mac Hollins because they were treating him as the 2 this entire preseason. And I'm like, oh man, it's not like I want Mac Hollins, but the veteran who they seem to trust, question mark. I still think it might be of a similar situation to the Packers, that even though because Shakir is the 3, it's similar to the Jaden Reed situation. So I still like Shakir a lot. It's just in the back of my mind, I'm just concerned of what if Samuel was a health situation. He starts to peck into Shakir. I don't think it's going to necessarily happen, but I think that Coleman, that's the real answer here. If you were excited about Coleman, getting to lead as the 1 and being the guy and potentially touchdown upside, because he did look his way a hell of a lot more, way over Dalton Kincaid even.
So when we talk about these teams next week and power rank the top 10, we'll see what happens with San Francisco and the Jets. Obviously on Monday Night Football, both those teams inside the top 10 and did not play this week. But a lot of people complain, myself included, about the early slate of games, even the late slate of games, that all the games were pretty terrible. But all of the good teams played in primetime this week. Like all 8 teams in primetime were pretty good teams. Like either the best teams, like they almost all, outside of the Rams, I think everyone is inside the top 10 here. And the Packers, who I bumped out because they lost their quarterback.
Yeah, and the Packers would have been here if not for that. Yeah, I think that's, the Dolphins, not in prime time, but outside of that.
I worry about Baltimore because their offensive line is putrid.
Really?
Yeah, I do.
Like, what do you mean by like, no, I understand that, but like worry, what's your worry though?
I just worry that
like
teams
that are not a top 5 team?
Yeah, like I just worry that if you have a bad offensive line, it's legitimately hard to be good.
That's fair. I think that their team can make up for it, and I think the excitement for what they did with Derrick Henry got kind of cooled a little bit for your argument, is the fact that, like, it's not just Derrick Henry, is that, but not being under center. And this is, it was in the pregame, they brought this up, and this was the only concern. Like, I'm not concerned about Derrick Henry. I was one of his biggest proponents for him, but purely on a touchdown basis of like, hey, Gus Edwards can do it, so can Derrick Henry, and Derrick Henry should roll into double-digit touchdowns. That's not a question. The production on a per-touch basis is, because we've already seen this from Derrick Henry before, and I forget who said it in the pregame, but it was Derrick Henry being in shotgun or pistol versus being under center in the normal single back. They said we, so I think, I don't remember. Anyway, it was the DeMarco Murray comparison, and that DeMarco Murray was one of the best. And then what happened when he got put in that position? He fell off with the Eagles. And there was just that, brought up that concern, and you add in the offensive line to it. So I'm just saying, like, with you, is like, I wouldn't be surprised if you get some Derrick Henry games of like 16 for 40 and no touchdown, and people are going to be frustrated.
I don't think I'm like breaking a lot of news here, but I'm going to give you a why behind Joe Mixon is an absolute sell at the moment, at the very peak of his value, if you get the proper return for it. He's not getting 33 touches.
47 touches?
Well, he's not getting 33 touches every single week. He didn't have a rush of over 14 yards in this game. Like, his efficiency was nowhere to be found. He's going to be valuable, but here's my takeaway of it. And the Texans are a good team, so they're going to be favored in a lot of these games, and he was running a ton on third down. But our favorite guy, the Goon, is a real problem on the Texans, I think, going forward, especially in close games and if they get behind. Dare Agunabola, you say it?
Agunabowale.
Agunabowale. He played 8 of 11 third downs for the Texans, and he played every snap inside of 2 minutes in both halves for them.
And I completely understand that, but my question, and I'm not like coming for you, so to speak, but like, for what? Joe Mixon was undervalued going into the season, and I think a lot of people are going to be hesitant on Joe Mixon. Obviously, if you can get top 5 or 6 running back value, you absolutely do it. But to your point, Chicago, Minnesota, Jacksonville, Buffalo, week 6, New England, Green Bay, Lovell will be back by then, Indianapolis, Jets, Lions. There's just, so what, there's 2 or 3 games in there where you're maybe concerned about it? So
you know what, you're saying. You say that game was a lot closer, and like the Colts didn't play great, but Stroud played kind of awful and should have thrown like 3 picks and didn't.
Yeah, but I think that goes the other way. It's like your argument for the other teams is like, as bad, like the Josh Allen thing, as bad as they played, like they did not play Texans football to a T, and they still won the game and still looked good enough at times. Actually, of everything brought up in this game, the one that I think is a little bit surprising that you didn't is Stephon Diggs' massive 0.2 air yards per target and getting touchdowns based like Stephon Diggs would actually, I would sell Stephon Diggs before I sold Joe Mixon.
It's just, I think that people are so running back starved that you could probably cash in on Mixon now. I think people are still a bit pensive about Steph Diggs. At least that's my interpretation. Okay. Maybe I'm wrong about that.
No, I put it this way. Both of them are worth floating out there to see what you can get.
Okay. Kansas City, when Hollywood Brown comes back, It's just the Rashee Rice show. Are you worried about Travis Kelce? Because I'm not.
I'm not. I mean, what tight end did good in week 1?
None.
Isaiah Likely.
Did any? Yeah. Besides Isaiah Likely, did any tight end have a good game?
No. There was like 3 or 4 double-digit performances, and they're all non-roster players.
Not good players. Detroit.
Yeah.
I worry about that. That's why I like Baker as the streamer this week. I worry about their defense a little bit, just watching how Stafford was able to come back and lead the Rams in that game without Nakua on the field and just went to Cup every single time. They moved the ball at will in the second half when they really had to.
Yeah.
And then,
I'm just.
Yeah, and then Philly and KC had like a C- effort each, and they both played well and beat good teams. Like, they're 1 and 2.
And so I'm going to come back to something you said in waivers. It's like, you know me, I was like completely off Brandon Cooks, but for the fact that if Ferguson is out, I'm 100, absolutely, because Jalen Tolbert, not even an issue like people were saying might happen. Turpin, whatever, just no.
All right. That will do it for the Pat Mayo experience. My underdog play for Monday Night Football is Deebo Samuel, higher than 19.5 longest reception. Aaron Rodgers under passing yards, and Jawan Jennings under receiving yards. How do you like that, Jake?
I actually like that. I brought up one of your under reception over yardage little parlays you like to do because it breaks the system.
Yeah, those are fun for same game parlays at all sportsbooks. You can use code Mayo right now at Underdog Fantasy, get a deposit bonus of up to $1,000. And kickoff at Monday Night Football is lock on the PME Underdog Pick'em contest with $25,000 in the prize pool. You can join that down in the description right now. All right, I'm Pat Mayo. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you next time.
Pat Mayo Experience! Experience!